On November 12th, in the year 1942, a significant milestone was reached in Richmond, California. A fully assembled cargo ship, measuring an impressive 441 feet in length and with a total weight surpassing 28,490,000 tons, was meticulously prepared to make its journey through the gates of the Permanente Metals Corporation shipyard, specifically at Yard No. 2, and confidently enter San Francisco Bay. Remarkably, this vessel had been constructed in an extraordinarily short span of just 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes, a period that defied all conventional expectations. To put this achievement into perspective, in traditional shipyards, established industry centers with centuries-old expertise, crafting vessels of similar size typically required anywhere from 6 to 8 months of meticulous effort, often extending back to the times before the American Revolution. Such projects involve teams of highly skilled master builders and seasoned maritime craftsmen who worked diligently over many months to ensure every detail was perfected. However, in this unprecedented case, an entire Liberty ship had been built ready for active service in a fraction of the usual time, showcasing a radical shift in manufacturing efficiency. As the crew of over 1,000 workers gradually withdrew from the hull of the ship, named the SS Robert E. Perry, the scene was filled with a mixture of astonishment and pride. These workers were not traditional shipbuilders or veteran maritime experts, but rather a diverse group comprising former secretaries, farmers who had never been involved in industrial construction, housewives, and laborers. Many of these individuals had learned welding techniques only a few weeks earlier, an astonishing feat that marked the beginning of a profound transformation in industrial production. Onlookers, including government officials, journalists from various media outlets, and owners of competing shipyards, gathered to witness this extraordinary event, fully aware that it signaled the start of a revolutionary era in manufacturing. This new systemic approach, driven by American ingenuity and technological innovation, would have repercussions that extended far beyond the immediate project. It represented a fundamental shift in how industrial output was conceptualized, planned, and executed, an evolution that would resonate across decades to come. This transformation did not originate randomly, but was rooted in a clear strategic mindset that sought to redefine limits and possibilities. In fact, the revolutionary spirit was already taking shape on December 27, 1940, when Henry J. Kaiser, a man whose previous career had nothing to do with shipbuilding, signed his first contract for constructing ships. Prior to this venture, Kaiser had spent his life managing earth-moving operations and pouring concrete for enormous dam projects across the American West, never once involving himself in the complexities of maritime construction. Yet, at the age of 58, he stood poised as a towering figure of ingenuity and determination, having just committed to the United States Maritime Commission that his company would deliver 30 cargo vessels for the British government in a mere 2 years. Many traditional shipbuilders and industry insiders dismissed Kaiser's ambitious promise, labeling him as an over-optimistic outsider who lacked the necessary expertise. The renowned Todbath Iron Works, one of America's oldest and most established shipyards, reluctantly agreed to partner with Kaiser on this ambitious project. Their rationale was that their extensive experience and expertise in naval construction would compensate for Kaiser's lack of formal shipbuilding background. However, what none of Kaiser's skeptics understood was that his unfamiliarity with conventional methods would ultimately prove to be his greatest strength. Among those observing this unfolding saga was William Francis Gibbs, a highly esteemed naval architect, arguably the most respected in America, whose firm, Gibbs & Cox, had developed the Liberty ship plans based heavily on British vessel designs. Gibbs had designed more ships than Kaiser had even seen in his entire life, and he represented the pinnacle of traditional naval architecture. Yet, what happened in the coming months would challenge all assumptions and mark a turning point in industrial history. The initial phases of this revolutionary movement started within the planning offices of Todd Shipyards in New York. As Kaiser's team carefully examined traditional shipbuilding procedures in early 1941, it quickly became apparent that these long-established methods would be insufficient to meet the urgent demands of wartime. The need for rapid, mass production of ships was pressing, and the usual meticulous, slow processes simply wouldn't suffice. Kaiser's chief engineer, Clay Bedford, had recently visited an assembly line operated by the Ford Motor Company in Detroit. There, he observed automobile chassis moving swiftly along production lines, with workers installing prefabricated parts at each station, a process optimized for speed and efficiency. This sight sparked a vision. Why couldn't ships be built using the same assembly line techniques? Upon returning to California, Bedford and the entire engineering team recognized that such a method could dramatically cut down construction time, transforming shipbuilding from a labor-intensive craft into a streamlined manufacturing process. However, their ideas were met with skepticism and even outright dismissal from traditional shipbuilders, who considered the comparison to automobile assembly lines to be naive or even ridiculous. Despite the doubts, the concept of revolutionizing how ships were built was beginning to take shape, a vision that would challenge entrenched practices and redefine industrial possibilities for the entire nation. The initial shockwave of revolutionary change struck when Henry Kaiser unveiled his bold proposal to entirely eliminate the traditional riveting process in shipbuilding. For centuries, the construction of ships heavily depended on riveting, a painstaking method where heated metal bolts, known as rivets, were hammered through overlapping steel plates to securely join sections of the hull together. This labor-intensive task was performed by highly skilled workers working in perfect coordination, typically managing to install around 100 rivets per day. To put that into perspective, constructing a standard Liberty ship, which was vital during the war effort, would require roughly 1 million rivets if built using conventional riveting techniques. Kaiser's innovative idea was to switch from this old-fashioned, manual process to electric arc welding, a technique he had previously mastered during his work on building pipelines across the vast American West. Electric welding had the potential to significantly streamline and accelerate the construction process. Despite his experience with welding pipelines, the idea of applying the same method to large-scale ship hulls was met with profound skepticism. The Vice Admiral Emory Land, who served as the chairman of the United States Maritime Commission, scrutinized Kaiser's radical proposal thoroughly. His private correspondence, now preserved in the National Archives, reveals the depth of concern within the maritime establishment regarding this untested approach. The legal and safety concerns surrounding welding at such a massive scale were significant. Historically, welding had never been conclusively proven reliable enough for the structural integrity required in ship hulls, especially at the scale of mass production. Notably, the Royal Navy of Britain had explicitly banned welding on warship hulls altogether, citing safety and durability issues. The proposal to rely on welding was essentially a gamble. America would be betting its vital supply lines on an unproven technology that could jeopardize reassuringly tested engineering standards. Yet, amidst this skepticism, widespread desperation recognized no alternative. German U-boats and surface raiders had been sinking Allied shipping at an alarmingly rapid rate, often faster than the existing shipyards could replace the lost vessels. In the year of 1941 alone, approximately 3,600,000 tons of Allied shipping would be lost to the ocean, either through enemy action or other causes. Britain, in particular, found itself teetering on the brink of starvation, as its vital supplies vanished beneath the waves faster than they could be replenished. Conventional American shipyards, which relied on traditional construction methods, would need an average of nearly 230 days to complete a single cargo ship. Under such a pace, the Allies risked losing the Battle of the Atlantic, as their vital maritime supply chain would collapse before their manufacturing capacity could meet the wartime demand. Faced with this dire situation, the decision was made not out of confidence in Kaiser's untested method, but out of sheer necessity for survival. This urgent need spurred the rapid development of a new type of shipyard in Richmond, Virginia. From an abandoned, muddy area between January and December of the year 1941, the site was transformed into a bustling hub of wartime production. Kaiser's team, composed largely of workers experienced in building dams and highways, specialists in large-scale, quick assembly, erected a factory that amazed and even appalled traditional maritime engineers. Unlike the established shipyards, which boasted enormous gantry cranes and long, linear building ways designed for the traditional, manual assembly of ships, the Richmond yard adopted an entirely different layout, one reminiscent of an automobile assembly plant. Open, spacious areas dedicated to the prefabrication of ship sections surrounded 7 parallel building ways. These ways were designed to accommodate the swift movement of huge steel components, some weighing as much as 150 tons, along railroad tracks that intersected the entire facility, enabling rapid transportation of parts from factory to assembly line. Overhead cranes, capable of lifting entire ship sections in one swift motion, stood at intervals of about 100 feet throughout the yard. When John Riley, the chief naval architect for Bethlehem Steel Corporation and a seasoned expert with over 30 years of experience in shipbuilding, visited the Richmond site in May of 1941, he was both impressed and critical. His confidential report of that inspection revealed a mixture of technical critique and reluctant admiration. Riley observed that Kaiser's design had blatantly violated nearly every principle of an efficient shipyard layout that he had learned during his lengthy career. He pointed out that the prefabrication areas were excessively spacious, and the crane capacities appeared exaggerated beyond necessity. He also noted that the building ways, long underwater channels used to launch ships, were shorter than convention dictated. Despite these criticisms, Riley acknowledged that the overall design was precisely tailored to Kaiser's stated goal, rapid assembly of pre-made sections, which was unprecedented in mainstream shipbuilding. The final key element of this transformation involved the arrival of a new workforce. Whereas traditional shipyards generally recruited skilled workers from maritime communities where shipbuilding skills had been passed down through generations, Kaiser's yard brought in a different kind of labor force. Workers trained in the construction of dams, bridges, and highways, accustomed to rapid, large-scale fabrication and assembly techniques. This infusion of fresh talent was crucial in realizing the ambitious goals of the new-style shipyard, marking the beginning of a revolutionary approach to naval logistics and wartime production at a pace never previously achieved. In the early months of the United States' entry into World War II, the Kaiser Company embarked on an ambitious campaign to revolutionize shipbuilding in America. To attract a sizable and eager workforce, the company launched widespread advertisements across newspapers throughout the country, offering wages that exceeded the typical industrial rates by a significant margin, specifically 20% higher, in hopes of drawing in unskilled laborers willing to learn. These advertisements promised that anyone with a willingness to work could be trained to participate in the vital task of constructing ships for the war effort. As a result, in August of 1941, the first groups of workers arrived in Richmond, ready to undertake this challenging but essential work. The approach Kaiser adopted in training its workers involved transforming complex, multi-layered tasks into simplified, repeatable operations, an idea borrowed directly from the assembly line production methods that had revolutionized automobile manufacturing. Instead of requiring workers to master entire skills at once, they were trained to perform specific, straightforward tasks repeatedly. This method proved to be extraordinarily effective. By the month of October in that same year, Kaiser's workforce in Richmond had grown to more than 10,000 individuals, among whom fewer than 200 had any prior maritime experience. Traditionally, skilled welders and shipbuilders would spend 4 years learning their craft as apprentices, acquiring a broad and comprehensive skill set. In stark contrast, Kaiser's instructors specialized in teaching specific techniques tailored precisely to individual tasks, and they managed to do so within approximately 2 weeks. Workers were not expected to master welding every component of a ship, but rather to focus on a single, well-defined task, such as welding the vertical seams on bulkheads, the horizontal plates on decks, or the curved sections of the hull, tasks they would perform repeatedly over and over again. As the months went by and workers gained practical experience through late 1941 and into early 1942, an astonishing development occurred. The construction times for Liberty ships, vital cargo vessels needed swiftly during wartime, began to plummet sharply. The first Liberty ship built at Kaiser's yard took an impressive 197 days from start to finish. The second ship was completed in just 169 days, and by the time the company had constructed its fifth vessel, the timeline had shrunk to 128 days. Astonishingly, The 10th ship was built in only 97 days. By the spring of that year, 2042, the average construction time had been reduced further to approximately 70 days per ship. Traditional shipyards looked on in growing concern as Kaiser's untrained workforce, assembled rapidly and without extensive prior experience, began to achieve productivity levels that matched or even surpassed those of highly skilled, long-trained crews in conventional yards. What underpinned this extraordinary surge in efficiency was Kaiser's innovative use of prefabrication, a method that many traditional shipbuilders had previously dismissed as impractical. Instead of building ships sequentially, starting from the keel and progressing upward to the deck and superstructure, Kaiser's yards prototyped a radically different approach. Large sections of the ships, such as the bow, stern, deck houses, engine rooms, and bulkheads, were fabricated concurrently across different parts of the facility. Multiple crews worked simultaneously on separate sections, such as one team assembling the bow while another worked on the stern, and others constructed the engine rooms and deck structures in parallel. Once these sections were completed, gigantic cranes would lift them into position along the building ways, almost like giant jigsaw pieces, where welding crews would fasten them together. Albert Wooding, who served as the production supervisor at Kaiser's Richmond Yard No. 2, provided some insight into this highly efficient process in a 1943 interview published by Fortune magazine. He explained that in traditional shipbuilding, the process was fundamentally linear. The engine could only be installed once the engine room was finished. The engine room itself could only be completed after the hull was fully built, and all of this happened in a strict sequence. Kaiser's method, on the other hand, allowed for production to occur in a remarkably parallel fashion. While one team of workers was welding hull plates to form the exterior shell of the ship, another team was assembling the engine in a separate, spacious workshop area. When both groups had finished their respective tasks, the engine would be lifted by crane and dropped seamlessly into the pre-constructed engine room, then welded securely into place, all accomplished within a matter of hours. This revolutionary approach drastically cut down the previously necessary weeks for such tasks. The statistical data confirmed that the efficiency gains were nothing short of extraordinary, something that traditional shipbuilders had regarded as impossible. For example, a conventional shipyard might enlist about 50 workers attempting to install a large engine over the course of 3 weeks, working within the tight, cluttered environment of an incomplete engine room. Kaiser's prefabrication process, however, assigned around 200 workers to build the entire engine and its mounting framework in an open, spacious workshop within only 5 days. Once completed, a large crane would then pick up the entire assembly and position it into the ship's hull in a single, swift operation lasting approximately 8 hours. This method of parallel manufacturing, relying on meticulous prefabrication and heavy use of cranes, transformed the speed and efficiency of shipbuilding during the war, illustrating the profound impact of innovative production techniques applied on a massive scale. It was a testament to how breaking away from traditional, sequential practices could dramatically accelerate vital wartime construction, saving both time and resources while maintaining, or even surpassing, the quality of craftsmanship achieved by long-experienced shipbuilders. What proved even more unsettling to the established maritime authorities was the casual abandonment of age-old shipbuilding methods that had been followed diligently for centuries. Traditionally, ships had been constructed based on meticulously detailed plans, carefully prepared blueprints that outlined every specific element necessary for the vessel's assembly. In stark contrast, Kaiser's approach involved the use of simplified drawings, which merely provided basic dimensions and left the finer details to the judgment of the skilled workers on the shop floor. To the traditional builders, this seemed nothing short of reckless, a dangerous departure from proven standards. However, Kaiser viewed this strategy quite differently. He termed it flexibility, emphasizing its adaptability and the potential for speeding up the construction process without sacrificing overall functionality. Initially, such a radical departure was met with resistance from seasoned experts like Vice Admiral Howard Vickery, who served as vice chair of the Maritime Commission and had spent his career in naval service. He expressed strong opposition to Kaiser's relaxed specifications, fearing that compromising on precision might undermine the integrity of the vessels. His objections were well documented in the minutes of early commission meetings, highlighting his initial doubts and concerns. Yet, over time, his perspective began to shift, especially as the results of Kaiser's methods became unmistakably clear. By January of one year, long since the beginning of this contested experiment, Vickery found himself increasingly convinced by the emerging evidence of success. Despite his initial skepticism about relaxing the stringent standards that traditionally governed shipbuilding, he observed that Kaiser's yards were producing ships at a remarkable pace, outstripping conventional builders in output. In fact, by March, Kaiser's shipyards were outperforming their traditional counterparts by an impressive margin of 40%. This discrepancy only grew sharper by June, when the gap in productivity had expanded to 70%. It became evident that, in this context, striving for perfection often proved to be an obstacle, what Kaiser called the enemy of enough. Unlike the traditional beautiful, meticulously crafted ships, Kaiser's vessels were functional rather than ornate. Their primary purpose was to be operational and capable of transporting cargo efficiently. Remarkably, these adequately built ships were not only sufficient for their intended roles, but also delivered more cargo within a given period than the more polished ships that were still under construction elsewhere. As the pace of construction accelerated through the spring and summer months of that year, an informal, yet intense competition arose among Kaiser's 7 shipyards spread across California, Oregon, and Washington. Kaiser's son, Edgar, serving as vice president and general manager, overseeing all of Kaiser's shipyards with particular attention to those in the Pacific Northwest, managed the Oregon Shipbuilding Corporation located in Portland. Meanwhile, Clay Bedford was responsible for operations at the Richmond yards in California. Both men, driven by ambition and a desire to excel, initiated an unofficial contest to see which facility could produce ships at a faster rate. The competition between the Richmond and Portland yards quickly caught public attention, turning into a spectacle that persisted through the fall of that year. Newspaper reports often listed updates akin to sports scores, commemorating the record-breaking progress of each yard. Repeatedly, these records were shattered. One of the most notable achievements was the construction of the Liberty ship, named Joseph Neal, completed in only 10 days in September of that year. Eventually, Vice Admiral Vickery intervened, declaring the speed contests to be unproductive stunts that distracted workers and managers from actual production goals. Despite his disapproval, the competition had already served its strategic purpose. It instilled a strong collective belief among the workforce in all 7 yards that extraordinary speed was not just a remote possibility, but an expected standard. Such a mindset fostered a culture of rapid manufacturing, pushing boundaries further with each passing week. The culmination of this relentless push for speed occurred in November when Vice Admiral Land visited the Richmond yard to inspect ongoing production. During the visit, he casually remarked to journalists, though his comments were overheard, that while the construction of Liberty ships had significantly improved, the current speed record still paled in comparison to achievements in other industries recognized for their mass production capabilities. Clay Bedford seized upon this comment as a direct challenge. He boldly proposed that the Richmond yard could attempt to build a complete Liberty ship from keel laying to launching in less than 10 days, cutting the existing record of 10 days in half. Vice Admiral Land, although skeptical about the feasibility, found the proposition intriguing and gave his tentative approval on the condition that such an effort would not interfere with the yard's regular production schedule. In a remarkable display of engineering innovation and logistical mastery, Bedford opted to commence the construction of the 97th hull at Yard No. 2, specifically chosen as part of a daring record-breaking project. This vessel was to be christened the SS Robert E. Peary, in honor of the renowned Arctic explorer whose daring expeditions had expanded the boundaries of human knowledge in the far north. Starting precisely at 1 minute past midnight on Sunday, the 8th of November, an immense workforce, exceeding 1,000 skilled laborers, would execute a meticulously coordinated operation, working in shifts that were carefully planned down to the last detail. These workers aimed to accomplish something utterly unprecedented in the history of maritime construction, an achievement that would challenge and reshape long-standing notions of shipbuilding capacity and speed. The approach taken for this extraordinary project was rooted in prefabrication, a strategy that had reached its most advanced and ambitious articulation during the pier construction phase. Every substantial component of the vessel had been produced in advance. Each part had undergone thorough inspection, been staged appropriately, and prepared for assembly long before the actual keel was laid on the building ways. The bow section, which itself comprised over 50 individual steel pieces, had been skillfully welded together into a solid structure and fitted with essential hardware such as anchors, chain lockers, and forward crew quarters, all ready before the assembly process commenced. Similarly, the stern was already equipped with the completed steering gear, the propeller shaft, and the aft crew spaces, which had been carefully assembled in advance. In addition, for massive cargo holds, each a colossal steel rectangular space, had been constructed and weighted precisely to facilitate their handling and installation. Meanwhile, the main engine, a massive triple-expansion steam power plant weighing approximately 140 tons and fabricated by Joshua Hendy Iron Works in Sunnyvale, had been mounted onto its foundation and subjected to comprehensive testing before it left the factory. Traditional shipbuilding yards, which usually took months to build from the keel up to the deck, relied on prolonged, incremental assembly. In stark contrast, Kaiser's yards managed to assemble a vessel virtually in its entirety from prefabricated sections over the course of only a few days. Remarkably, within just 4 days from the start of construction, the hull structure was complete. The engine had been installed, deck houses positioned, cargo holds secured firmly into place, and the steering gear mounted, all in an astonishingly short period. By Thursday, the 12th of November, precisely at 3:30 in the afternoon, after only 4 days, 15 hours, and 29 minutes since the keel first touched the building ways, the SS Robert E. Perry was launched by sliding down the specially built launching rails into the waters of San Francisco Bay. The vessel was subsequently delivered for active service on the 15th of November, setting an additional record by reaching full operational readiness in just 7 days, 14 hours, and 32 minutes from the time the keel was laid. The event attracted an audience of witnesses, including maritime officials, military officers, competing shipyard owners, and journalists representing various regions across the United States, many of whom arrived with skeptical expectations. Some anticipated witnessing either a failure in the process or a vessel that might seem complete in appearance but lacked genuine functionality. Instead, they were greeted by an astonishing sight, a fully operational ship, requiring only minor fitting-out work before it could enter active service. Among those present for the launch was Vice Admiral Land, who briefly addressed the gathering, and his remarks were captured succinctly by newsreel cameras. His words embodied a momentous acknowledgement within the maritime community that a major paradigm shift had occurred. He declared, "6 months ago, I would have considered this impossible." Traditional shipbuilding wisdom, built upon over 3,000 years of accumulated experience, stated unequivocally that constructing a proper vessel within 5 days was beyond the realm of possibility. However, he continued, Henry Kaiser has rendered this long-held belief obsolete. His declaration signaled a new era, one in which the United States Maritime Commission would now mandate all contracted shipyards to adopt these innovative methods of rapid construction. The psychological impact of this achievement was swift and profound. Yards that had previously dismissed Kaiser as an uninformed outsider, just 18 months earlier, began sending their engineers to study and understand his novel techniques. Notably, the president of the venerable New York Shipbuilding Corporation, one of America's oldest and most prestigious shipyards, paid a visit to Kaiser's facilities in Richmond during December of the subsequent year, clearly recognizing the significance of these revolutionary advancements and their potential to transform the entire industry. His confidential report to the board of directors laid bare a complete ideological breakdown concerning traditional shipbuilding methods and long-held craft standards. Kaiser had achieved what many in the industry thought was impossible. He had completely reimagined the process, refusing to accept the numerous limitations that had historically constrained maritime construction. Instead of viewing shipbuilding as a delicate craft passed down through generations, he approached it purely as a manufacturing challenge that could be optimized through industrial techniques. In doing so, he brought about a radical transformation by simplifying processes that other shipbuilders aimed for perfection in. He standardized components where previous practices emphasized customization. Moreover, he revolutionized workforce training by focusing on mass education of large numbers of unskilled workers, rather than cultivating generational expertise. This approach led to astonishing results. Ships that were built in merely a tenth of the time traditionally required, at approximately two-thirds of the usual cost. Such a monumental shift forced the entire industry to consider whether to adopt Kaiser's strategies or face the dire prospect of obsolescence. By the early part of the year 1943, Kaiser's influence had radically reshaped American maritime production, with nearly 18 shipyards across the country engaging in the mass production of Liberty ships using prefabrication techniques and welding, methods that were relatively new at the time. The average duration needed to complete a ship plummeted from about 230 days at the outset down to just 42 days by the middle of 1943. With these innovations, the United States was launching roughly 3 Liberty ships each day, a formidable tonnage that exceeded the total amount of German submarines capable of sinking American vessels. Yet perhaps the most profound challenge to the established maritime hierarchy stemmed from the exceptional quality and diversity of Kaiser's workforce. Tens of thousands of women, minority workers, and untrained laborers played a pivotal role in this industrial revolution, serving as a direct repudiation of the old guild-based system that had predominated shipbuilding for centuries. At the height of production in 1944, Kaiser's 7 shipyards employed approximately 196,000 workers. Among these, over 40,000 were women, which represented an extraordinary share of the female industrial workforce at the time. By mid-1944, women accounted for around 27% of the workforce at the Richmond Yard alone. The 3 Kaiser yards in the northwestern United States employed over 31,000 women by 1944. African American workers also made up a significant portion of the workforce, numbering in the tens of thousands and holding skilled roles such as welding, fitting, crane operation, and even supervisory positions, an arrangement that was remarkably progressive for the racial and social norms of 1940s America. The workplace integration scene at Kaiser's yards was unusual for its time, challenging existing racial and gender barriers. The democratization of skilled labor enabled by Kaiser's industrial practices went far beyond wartime logistics, hinting at broader social implications. By demonstrating that complex manufacturing tasks could be successfully carried out by trained workers who lacked multi-generational craft backgrounds, Kaiser's shipyards called into question fundamental assumptions about skill, labor, and the organization of industry. A notable example of this shift occurred during Christmas 1943, serving as another striking illustration of Kaiser's transformed industrial culture. Unlike traditional shipyards, which typically shut down for a day or two to observe the holiday, Kaiser's facilities maintained their production schedules, but this did not mean that the holiday was ignored. Instead, Kaiser's management organized Christmas celebrations that acknowledged and appreciated the sacrifices made by the workers. At the Richmond yards, for instance, the management arranged for a special Christmas dinner served in the company cafeterias, featuring turkey, ham, and all the traditional fixings, offered free of charge to all workers on shift. Local churches sent carolers to lift spirits, and the Richmond Municipal Band performed holiday music, creating a festive atmosphere. Kaiser himself made personal visits to the yards, greeting workers with handshakes and expressing gratitude for their dedication and hard work. By the middle of the year 1944, Kaiser's 7 shipyards had collectively produced over 800 Liberty ships, a staggering achievement that underscored the profound industrial and social transformation driven by Kaiser's innovative approach. The impact of Kaiser's innovative methods extended well beyond the boundaries of his own shipyards, shaping an era of unprecedented industrial achievement in maritime manufacturing. During the peak years, the United States was producing an astonishing number of ships. Specifically, the 18 American shipyards dedicated to building Liberty ships had collectively completed a total of 2,400 vessels by this point in the wartime effort. These Liberty ships were essential to the war effort, but starting from 1944, a new, more formidable design called the Victory ship was introduced. Larger and faster than their Liberty predecessors, Victory ships were constructed using the same revolutionary prefabrication and welding techniques that Kaiser and his team famously developed. Between the year 1941 and 1945, the entire maritime industry in America had scaled up to an extraordinary level, with the total number of ships built surpassing 5,500 vessels, which collectively amounted to roughly 53 million tons of shipping capacity. To contemporaries, this level of production was mind-boggling, an astounding feat that pushed the limits of technological and logistical capabilities of the era. Even by modern standards, such a colossal output remains impressive. Observing this industrial surge was Commander Joseph Kenworthy of the Royal Navy, who was stationed in Washington as part of the British delegation led by Admiral T. He watched the American industrial effort with a mixture of admiration and a touch of envy. Upon declassification in the 1980s, his official reports to Admiral T offered a vivid insight into the British perspective, highlighting America's commanding dominance in shipbuilding. The United States was producing merchant vessels at a rate that far surpassed the combined efforts of the rest of the world. For example, the Kaiser shipyard alone was manufacturing more tons of shipping every month than the entire British shipbuilding industry could produce in that same period. Admittedly, the ships built under Kaiser's methods were not elegant by traditional standards. Their design was quite utilitarian and crude, lacking ornament and refinement. Yet functionally, they were reliable. They floated, could carry cargo, and hundreds of thousands of tons of materials were transported on these vessels. While the Royal Navy crafted the most sophisticated warships in the world, relying on meticulous craftsmanship and years of dedicated labor per vessel, the Americans adopted a different approach. They produced ships that were adequate, technically sufficient, in mere weeks. This concept of adequacy, multiplied by thousands, proved far more effective than striving for perfection in a limited number of vessels. The sheer volume of adequately built ships overwhelmed the precision and perfection of traditional methods, highlighting a strategic adaptation to wartime demands. It was this pragmatic mindset that allowed the United States to dominate maritime logistics during the conflict. Perhaps the most astonishing aspect of Kaiser's Industrial Revolution was not merely the rapid wartime expansion, but what followed after the war's conclusion. Conventional wisdom among critics and analysts anticipated that once the conflict ended, the wartime shipbuilding boom would rapidly decline. Tens of thousands of workers, who had been employed in the shipyards, would find themselves unemployed, and the once bustling facilities would be left abandoned and in disrepair. This prediction proved to be only partly accurate. Production of Liberty ships officially ceased in September of 1945. By that winter, Kaiser's workforce had shrunk dramatically, from a peak of 200,000 employees down to fewer than 20,000. The Richmond shipyards, which at their height employed 100,000 workers, stood largely vacant by the spring of 1946. Yet this temporary decline did not erase the innovation's legacy. The technological knowledge and manufacturing techniques developed during Kaiser's emergency program did not vanish into oblivion. Instead, the prefabrication methods, welding procedures, and parallel assembly lines he pioneered became standard practices, not only in the United States, but eventually across the globe. When Japan and South Korea sought to rebuild their maritime industries in the 1950s and 60s, they studied Kaiser's Liberty ship program extensively and adopted his approaches as the foundational methodologies for their shipyards. The enormous shipbuilding facilities established in places like Ulan, South Korea, and Nagasaki, Japan, centers that would dominate global shipping construction for decades, are direct descendants of the innovative practices first implemented at Richmond. According to John Bunker, a distinguished professor of maritime history at the State University of New York Maritime College, Kaiser's lasting influence can be summarized as a transformational force in the industry. In his definitive 2072 study, Bunker highlighted that Kaiser, an outsider to the traditional maritime world, approached shipbuilding with a pioneering spirit. Unburdened by the conventional wisdom and historical conventions that constrained traditional shipyards, Kaiser applied manufacturing principles borrowed from other industries, which the established maritime sector considered inappropriate or unorthodox for ship construction. Kaiser's entry into shipbuilding was marked by a fearless willingness to challenge existing standards. His innovation-oriented mindset and unconventional approach paved the way for a profound shift in how ships were designed, built, and assembled, establishing a new blueprint for wartime urgency and post-war industrial evolution. Over the course of just 3 years, he managed to oversee the construction of more ships than had ever been built across the entire United States throughout the entire previous century. This astonishing achievement not only set a new record for production volume, but also brought about a fundamental transformation in shipbuilding practices that would influence the industry worldwide for decades to come. The innovative techniques he introduced, namely modular construction, prefabrication, and welded assembly, initially pioneered in his shipyards, have since become the universal standards employed by modern shipyards across the globe. Today, whether the construction involves container ships in South Korea, oil tankers in Japan, or cruise ships in various parts of Europe, the foundational approaches stem directly from the principles established during Kaiser's Liberty Ship program. The true magnitude of Kaiser's accomplishment can be effectively appreciated through a series of striking statistics that highlight both the impressive scale of the program and its extraordinary success. According to production records, a total of 2,710 Liberty ships were built across 18 American shipyards between the years of 1941 and 1945. At the peak of this effort, production rates soared to an average of approximately 1.8 ships per day. Remarkably, Kaiser's 7 shipyards alone were responsible for constructing 1,490 vessels, constituting roughly 27% of all American wartime merchant ships built under maritime commission contracts during that period. The improvements in construction time were equally impressive. Initially, in 1941, the average time to complete a Liberty ship was around 230 days. However, by 1943, this duration had been sharply reduced to just 42 days. The record for the fastest construction was set by the ship named Robert E. Perry, which went from keel laying to launching in an astonishing 4 days and 15 hours. This dramatic reduction in build time was primarily driven by workers gaining invaluable experience and implementing more efficient techniques. In the beginning, the first Liberty ships required roughly 1,100,000 worker hours each to complete. By 1943, this figure had been cut nearly in half, falling to approximately 486,000 worker hours per vessel. The most efficient of Kaiser's yards, specifically numbers 2 and 3 located in Richmond, achieved even more remarkable milestones by employing production schedules with multiple shifts around the clock, often operating 24 hours a day, combined with the strategic use of prefabricated components. These yards managed to construct ships using as few as 350,000 worker hours per vessel, showcasing an extraordinary level of productivity and specialization. This was a stark contrast to the original construction process, illustrating how the combination of operational optimization and focused task mastery could dramatically accelerate shipbuilding timelines. Cost-wise, the savings were equally significant. The initial Liberty ships, produced at the beginning of the program, cost approximately $1,750,000 to $2 million each, a substantial investment at the time. Nevertheless, by 1943, despite rising wages and increasing costs for materials, the price per ship had fallen to around $1,800,000. This reduction in expense was a direct result of the continuous improvements in efficiency, learning curve effects, and process innovations that Kaiser's shipyards employed throughout the war effort. In terms of capacity, each Liberty ship was a true behemoth, displacing 14,245 tons when fully loaded. These vessels could carry around 10,800 tons of cargo, which included a diverse array of operational equipment. For example, in a single voyage, they could transport 2,840 jeeps for 140 tanks, or an incredible 230 million rounds of ammunition, demonstrating their vital role in supporting military logistics during the conflict. Powering these ships was a triple expansion steam engine, a design that, although considered somewhat traditional by modern standards, was chosen deliberately for its proven reliability and ease of manufacturing. With this power plant, Liberty ships could reach speeds of around 11 knots, which was sufficient for convoy operations across treacherous Atlantic routes. The efficiency of training workers to perform their roles was just as astonishing as their productivity in construction. Kaiser's training programs emphasized task specialization, enabling workers to become proficient in specific operations in as little as 2 weeks on average. For particularly straightforward roles such as spot welders, training could be completed in as little as 10 days before workers became fully operational. More complex positions, such as crane operators or ship fitters, required 4 to 6 weeks of focused training to reach full competency. This rapid and targeted approach stood in stark contrast to traditional maritime apprenticeships, which could take 4 years for basic skills or even 10 years to attain master craftsman status. The key difference lay in the focus on specialization rather than broad, general training. Kaiser's workers concentrated on mastering particular repetitive tasks, which they performed hundreds of times with high precision and efficiency. Despite initial doubts about the safety and durability of ships built at such an unprecedented pace, the Liberty ships proved highly effective and resilient. The rates of battle-related casualties among these vessels demonstrated their reliability and durability, reaffirming that even in the face of skepticism, the innovative rapid construction approaches Kaiser's shipyards had pioneered proved to be both practical and effective in fulfilling the urgent wartime demands. During the height of World War II, an impressive fleet of manufacturing, specifically a total of 2,710 Liberty ships, was constructed rapidly to meet the urgent demands of wartime logistics and transport. Out of this vast number, approximately 200 vessels were lost due to enemy attacks, which translates to a casualty rate of roughly 7.4%. When viewed in the context of pre-war merchant shipping loss rates, this figure was notably favorable, demonstrating that the new construction methods and designs were, in fact, quite effective. Despite initial skepticism surrounding welded shipbuilding, particularly regarding its durability and safety, it soon became evident that these vessels were capable of withstanding the rigors of the sea. However, some ships did encounter significant structural issues directly attributable to welding defects, which occasionally led to catastrophic failures. Notably, there were 3 Liberty ships that completely fractured into 2 separate halves as a result of brittle fracture problems, representing a very small fraction, about 0.11% of the total production. On a broader scale, nearly 1,450 instances of severe brittle fractures were documented across the entire Liberty fleet during its operational period. Nevertheless, instances where these failures resulted in complete, total breaks remained rare, and such incidents prompted swift improvements in welding techniques along with more rigorous standards for steel quality. By the year 1944, these engineering enhancements successfully eradicated the problem altogether. These early failure statistics ultimately served as a powerful validation of Kaiser's innovative construction methods. Designed initially as emergency vessels, Liberty ships had an expected service life of about 5 years. Yet, in reality, many proved to be extraordinarily durable, far exceeding their anticipated lifespans. Remarkably, numerous ships remained in service for several decades beyond the end of the war. For example, the SS John W. Brown, launched in 1942, still functions as a museum ship today. In the year 2024, located in Baltimore, more than 82 years after it first entered service. Similarly, the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, another vessel built in 1942, has been meticulously preserved in San Francisco. This ship participated in the commemoration of the 50th anniversary of D-Day in 1994, and shocking many by sailing across the Atlantic under its own power precisely 50 years after its initial launch. Furthermore, a third Liberty ship, the SS Hellas Liberty, now serves as a static museum exhibit in Greece, allowing visitors to appreciate its historical significance firsthand. Beyond their wartime service, the post-war careers of Liberty ships were often surprisingly extended. Many of these vessels, approximately 835 out of the roughly 2,510 surviving ships, continued operating in commercial service into the 1960s. Quite a few were sold to foreign shipping firms, where they remained active well into the 1970s. An illustrative example is the SS Albert Mbo, the last Liberty ship built and delivered on the 30th of October, 1945. Rather than being scrapped at the end of its useful life, this vessel was repurposed and sold in 1964 for $65,557. In 1965, it was converted into the fish cannery ship named Star of Kodiak. Today, it remains in operation, although landlocked, serving as the headquarters of Trident Seafoods in Kodiak, Alaska, an extraordinary testament to the ship's longevity and adaptability over nearly 8 decades since its original construction. The economic ripple effects of the Liberty Ship program extended beyond shipbuilding alone, profoundly impacting American industry as a whole. The enormous quantities of steel required for construction prompted a significant expansion of steel manufacturing capacity, especially along the West Coast. Kaiser, a key figure in this effort, built the Fontana Steel Mill specifically to supply his shipyards with steel. Remarkably completed in 1942, 5 months ahead of schedule, this steel mill produced approximately 700,000 tons of steel each year and helped establish California as a major steel-producing region for the first time in its history. Additionally, production of essential materials such as magnesium for incendiary bombs and aluminum for aircraft was carried out at specialized Kaiser plants, integrated into a comprehensive wartime industrial effort. The employment effects radiated outward through numerous communities across California, Oregon, and Washington states. For instance, the city of Richmond, California, experienced a dramatic population increase from about 23,000 residents in 1940, surging to over 100,000 by 1943. This growth was entirely driven by employment opportunities created through the shipyards and supporting industries. Similarly, Kaiser built Vanport City in Oregon, which for a brief period became the second largest city in that state, with a population exceeding 40,000, almost all of whom were employed either directly or indirectly in shipbuilding or associated sectors. Although these rapidly developed towns, often referred to as boom towns, had a fleeting existence, their very emergence and expansion served as powerful demonstrations of the profound impact that concentrated industrial investment can have on local economies and communities. These settlements, temporarily sprouting along shipbuilding yards and industrial hubs, vividly illustrated how significant the influence of targeted financial and technological resources could be in transforming entire regions almost overnight. Moreover, one of the most surprising and lasting legacies of Kaiser's ambitious shipbuilding initiative was its contribution to healthcare innovation. An unexpected consequence of this massive wartime effort was the birth of pioneering medical care systems, which ultimately revolutionized healthcare delivery in the United States. To meet the needs of his enormous workforce, Kaiser entered into a partnership with a physician named Sidney Garfield. Together, they established prepaid healthcare programs designed to ensure medical coverage for thousands of workers. Over time, these early experiments laid the foundation for what would grow into Kaiser Permanente, today recognized as one of the largest and most comprehensive health maintenance organizations in the country. The groundbreaking approach of prepaid, preventive healthcare established during the wartime shipyards profoundly influenced American medical practices for many decades to come. By the beginning of the 21st century, this model was serving more than 12 million members, illustrating its far-reaching impact. The experiences and lessons learned by the shipyard workers themselves also played a crucial role in shaping post-war achievements. They carried forward the knowledge gleaned from wartime hardships into peaceful pursuits, contributing to decades of innovation and progress. These workers often benefited from opportunities that were rarely available through traditional career pathways, especially for young women and members of minority groups. The industrial and technological advances born in the shipyards opened doors that remained open for the remainder of their lives, enabling many individuals to forge new careers and improve their socioeconomic status. The innovations originating from the Liberty Ship program extended well beyond the maritime industry, influencing a broad spectrum of technological and industrial fields. The welding techniques refined under the intense pressure of wartime production became standard practice in constructing structural steel frameworks, fabricating equipment for petroleum refining, and manufacturing pressure vessels essential for various industries. Additionally, The prefabrication methods pioneered at sites like Richmond significantly impacted construction techniques used in housing developments, bridge construction, and industrial facilities. These approaches allowed for faster, more efficient building processes, reducing costs and timelines. Furthermore, the organizational principles developed, such as parallel production flows, simplified specifications, and rapid worker training programs, laid the groundwork for modern operations management and industrial engineering education. In 25 years, these concepts have become fundamental elements of manufacturing efficiency. The importance of the Liberty Ship program as a case study in rapid industrial capability development was underscored by Professor Michael Porter of Harvard Business School, who analyzed American industrial competitiveness in a significant 2085 study. He highlighted this program as a prime example of how a nation can effectively build substantial industrial capacity in a remarkably short period when necessity and strategic organization align. At the outset of World War II, the United States possessed only a limited capacity for building merchant ships, a capability that was insufficient for wartime needs. However, within just 2 years, American shipyards were producing more tonnage than the combined output of the rest of the world. This extraordinary achievement proved that what was once considered a fixed and slow-moving industrial infrastructure could, under the right circumstances, be rapidly scaled and enhanced. It demonstrated conclusively that workforce skills, production systems, and industrial infrastructure are not inherently static. Rather, they can be developed at an unprecedented pace when driven by urgent necessity and organized effectively. These lessons transcend the context of wartime emergency in a profound way. They suggest that many perceived limitations on industrial capacity are often rooted in organizational and conceptual barriers rather than insurmountable physical constraints. The psychological transformation wrought by the Liberty Ship program among industrial managers and engineers was arguably as significant as the physical ships produced. Before Kaiser's pioneering efforts, manufacturing executives generally adhered to conventional wisdom regarding their limits. Accepting predetermined ideas about production capacity required skill levels and organizational structures. Kaiser's work demonstrated that such traditional beliefs could be challenged and overturned. His example proved that breakthrough performance is often achievable when one questions fundamental assumptions and introduces innovative strategies. The remarkable story of the Liberty ships stands as a powerful testament to one of the most fundamental truths about human potential and the boundless possibilities of industrial innovation. These ships, while undeniably critical in securing victory for the Allied forces during World War II, symbolize something far greater than their mere role in wartime logistics. Their importance lies in what their rapid construction represented, a demonstration that ordinary individuals, when equipped with proper training and given the opportunity, can accomplish extraordinary feats. The processes that previously took years to perfect through long-standing craftsmanship and traditional methods could, under the right circumstances, be condensed into mere weeks by implementing systematic and streamlined procedures. Entire industries, often resistant to change for centuries and deeply rooted in conventional ways of working, were suddenly transformed within a matter of months. This radical shift was made possible when urgent necessity and inventive thinking converged, unleashing unparalleled industrial revolutions. It was not simply about building ships faster. It was about redefining the very limits of what was thought to be feasible in manufacturing. Reflecting on this transformative period, Admiral Chester Nimitz, who was the commander of the United States Pacific Fleet during the war, provided insights in his post-war memoir published in 1960. He described how the United States fought across a staggering 5,000 miles of the Pacific Ocean. During this vast expanse, ships were produced at a pace that outstripped the enemy's ability to sink them. In other words, the United States was manufacturing ships so rapidly that the rate of production surpassed the rate at which the adversary could destroy them. This relentless industrial output became a strategic advantage, undermining Japan's assumptions about American industrial limits. Japanese military strategists had believed that American military strength, while impressive, was ultimately finite. They assumed that if they inflicted enough damage by sinking a significant portion of the fleet, American logistical and supply chains would ultimately collapse. forcing the United States into surrender negotiations. These planners failed to anticipate the ingenuity and resourcefulness of Henry Kaiser and his revolutionary approach to shipbuilding. By the year 1944, the United States was replacing its shipping losses at a rate faster than the enemy could cause them. This meant that the mathematics of attrition heavily favored the side capable of building more ships each day than the enemy could destroy, a ratio that leaned strongly in America's favor. In this context, the outcome of the Pacific War was decided not only on the battlefield, but primarily within the bustling shipyards of Richmond, Portland, and Baltimore. These inland industrial hubs became the nerve centers of victory just as decisively as the beaches of Inuitak and Okinawa. The conquest was as much won in these factories as it was through combat on the front lines. Henry Kaiser's most significant achievement was not merely the staggering total of approximately 1,490 ships produced by his yards, impressive though that number was, but rather the profound transformation of what industries around the world believed to be possible under extraordinary circumstances. One of the most striking symbols of this change was the vessel named Robert E. Perry, which was constructed in less than 5 days, a feat that defied traditional expectations of shipbuilding times. This rapid construction stood as a tangible proof that long-standing beliefs rooted in craft and tradition did not necessarily reflect truth or feasibility. It challenged the conventional wisdom that certain manufacturing processes could only be carried out over extended periods. Instead, Kaiser's innovation suggested that with revolutionary methods, industrial progress could and should be accelerated dramatically. Following the war, the maritime industry and industrial sectors more broadly began a process of studying and adopting Kaiser's techniques. The skepticism and dismissiveness with which Kaiser's methods were initially met, especially by the established maritime establishment, which considered him an outsider and an untrained newcomer in 1940, gradually gave way to respect and implementation. Over decades, these strategies were integrated into standard operating procedures across various fields of manufacturing. The young workers who mastered welding, fitting, and fabrication during the war carried these newly acquired skills into peacetime careers that contributed significantly to rebuilding and invigorating America's post-war economy. Their confidence and expertise, developed in the crucible of wartime urgency, became foundational in shaping the nation's economic resurgence. The innovative approaches pioneered in this emergency period did not vanish after the war. Instead, they became the new norms or standards in manufacturing worldwide. These methods influenced industries well beyond shipbuilding, affecting the very way that products were designed, produced, and delivered across various sectors and countries. Ultimately, the story of how a civilian innovator's approach allowed Liberty ships to appear in days instead of months is a story rooted in tangible demonstration and proof. It exemplifies that the greatest revolutions in industry and technology often originate from individuals or teams unbound by tradition and dogma. Progress, it turns out, demands daring, an ability to question accepted limits, challenge conventional wisdom, and envision revolutionary improvements. Human potential, when structured properly and driven by inspired leadership, exceeds even the most entrenched expectations. Henry Kaiser's workers were not inherently more talented or superior beings. They were ordinary men and women enabled by a visionary leader and an efficient system of organization. Through belief, systematic innovation, and dedicated effort, they achieved extraordinary results, proving that normal people can surpass traditional limits when given the right tools, encouragement, and frameworks. This story underscores the power of demonstration, the idea that proof in practice is often more compelling than any theoretical assertion. It reveals that profound industrial breakthroughs often come from those daring enough to challenge the status quo and to reimagine what humanity can achieve through ingenuity and resilience. The lesson exemplified by the bustling shipyards of Richmond and further validated through the remarkable feat of constructing 2,710 ships maintains its profound relevance even today. In a world where industries often confront seemingly insurmountable challenges that traditional thinking considers almost impossible to overcome. These Liberty ships, now mostly removed from active service, either dismantled and scrapped many decades ago or lying peacefully at the bottom of the ocean, are no longer part of the modern landscape. Yet, the revolutionary spirit they symbolized continues to influence practices in every contemporary shipbuilding facility, in countless manufacturing plants that rely on prefabrication techniques, and in numerous training programs designed to impart specific skills swiftly, rather than spreading knowledge thinly over a broad array of disciplines. Moreover, their legacy persists in the minds of managers and innovators who ponder whether certain tasks labeled as impossible are truly beyond reach or simply untried because no one has yet dared to find a solution. This enduring legacy belongs fundamentally to Henry Kaiser, whose vision and determination redefined what could be achieved through collective effort and innovative thinking. His influence is etched not in steel, but in a transformed understanding of human potential, an understanding of what dedicated, resourceful individuals can accomplish when freed from the shackles of outdated traditions and encouraged to challenge the perceived limits of possibility. From the moment in December of 1940 when he signed his first contract, entering the shipbuilding industry with little more than a willingness to learn, to November of 1942 when the vessel named Robert E. Peary was launched after fewer than 5 days of construction, an astonishing feat, and finally, to September of 1945, when the last Liberty ship was delivered, Kaiser demonstrated a fundamental truth, that true industrial revolutions are not driven by tiny incremental improvements, but by radical reimagining of what can be achieved in the realm of manufacturing and production. During the span of just over 4 years, from the initial contract signing to the final ship's delivery, these 2,710 Liberty vessels crisscrossed oceans, carrying vital cargo, supplies, and hope across the vast waters of the world. Their existence stood as undeniable proof that human ingenuity, when freed from the constraints of tradition and propelled by pressing necessity, has the extraordinary capacity to turn the seemingly impossible into reality. These ships, beyond their physical form, symbolize a profound testament to the spirit of innovation and resilience that can reshape entire industries and redefine what humanity considers achievable in the face of daunting challenges.